a corollary that comes off this thing of God being uncreated, not the fact that he's infinite, but that this word means that he is spiritual. His being is spiritual and not material. Now, this seems fairly obvious, but it really is a very important thing to know about God. The reason why it is so important is because the demonic world doesn't like really the material. It thinks that this verse, God was manifest in the flesh, is one of the scariest verses in the demonic world. Because they don't mind things being spiritual, but they don't ever want that spiritual to come right here and be there. Now let me give you some of these verses. They're quite well-known ones. The first one has to do with the commandment. Exodus 20, verse 4. You shall not make unto you any graven image, or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or in the earth beneath, or in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down yourself to them, or serve them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God. Now, a quick question. That verse, does this verse prohibit art, photography, sculpture, architecture, anything? No. I had to do a session once on toys. That's when everybody was paranoid about the Cabbage Patch dolls being demonic and attacking you, and digging out all these old movies of the ventriloquist doll, that would chase you and stuff. And everybody's all paranoid. So our church, I had to give them a session. I was asked to do a thing on toys. Which toys are demonic and which are not. And they had some Christian toys. They had a little, Jesus toy and a Moses toy. And their question is, there was actually three questions. One, isn't it bad to read fantasy, to read any stories that aren't true? Because that's fantasy, and fantasy isn't reality, and therefore it's probably not Christian. So, well, let's get rid of all the fairy stories, all that thing. The parents can get weird at times. And then the second question was, what dolls are good? What toys can kids play with? That's Christian. And sort of general advice. I was supposed to come up with a list. Cabbage Patch, no. Jesus doll, very good. That thing. You can't. So the first thing I read was the scripture. Well, does this prohibit any kind of doll, any kind of toy at all? Is Barney demonic? Yes. Die, Barney. Does this thing prohibit any kind of art? Can you take a picture of somebody? In some countries, no way. That's demonic. You can't do stuff, steal souls and things. It is important to see that God commanded people to make things. In the temple, they were given specific instructions. There are animals and stuff made, not brazen calves. God is not into brazen calves very much. He doesn't mind if people grind them up and eat them, apart from mad cow disease. But this commandment prohibits not the making of, but the making of as a representation of him. So the conclusion was, it's all right to have art and things like that, as long as that art or that toy or anything else does not become a substitute for this. The real God cannot be put in the Jesus doll then. It's probably more dangerous than the Barney doll, because everybody thinks, I know Jesus. I threw him out when I was a little kid. His head came off or something. But there are people, when you talk to them about Christ, they have this picture of a silver man dead hanging up there. Do you know what I mean? That is an idolatry, because what you're doing is taking the one who is beyond all this mere representation and making that the whole thing. Now you've got to see that when you make something represent something that is bigger than it, like this. I'm going to draw this little shape. What is this? What is that? A mountain, an angle, an acute angle. He didn't come to be admired, he came to be drawn. Anything else? TP, dunce's cap, a pyramid, an L in Russian, a corner of a building seen from a certain perspective, a road running away in the distance. See that? In other words, when I'm doing a representation, it must be made to mean more than one thing. A note on a staff could be a drum, it could be a bass guitar, it could be a piano, it could be brass, it could be woodwind, it could be a bunch of different things. And C.S. Lewis talked about what he calls the doggy mind. And it was a sermon on Pentecost. He said, on the day of Pentecost, people heard people worship God in all these different languages. He said, sometimes people worshiping God in a different language means that they come from a different country. And sometimes it means that God has arrived, supernaturally. See that? Now that same language can be supernatural or natural. See that? Exactly the same thing. Have you ever had a dog, and the dog was hungry, and you went and got the dog food, and the dog was sort of following you, and then you poured some water out, and the dog started drinking the water, and then you poured the dog food out in another bowl, and the dog sort of looks at you like you didn't see you pouring the dog food out or something, and it looks like you, is this all I get today? Is water, is it? And you go, no, and you point. You point to the bowl. See that? And the dog looks at your finger like, does he want me to eat his finger? I mean, what? See that? Because to the doggy brain, a finger is only a finger. It is never anything else. It doesn't mean anything. It's a finger. That is the rationalist mindset. See that? It says, that is an acute angle. I will fight you on it. Well, of course it is, Pinhead. But it can also be something else. Sometimes it's just what it is. Sometimes it is actually evidence of an intervention from another world. And it's a wonderful treatment in that in the Weight of Glory. When God the Infinite translates down, that thing is more than one thing. You'll see this in His Word. When you read God's book, it will say something to you one day, and then you'll come back years later and it'll blow you away. You go, oh, I never saw that. Of course you did. You'll see different scriptures in an entirely new light, stuff that you thought you would recognize from time past, and now there's a whole new dimension to it. Because what we're seeing in God's Word is a revelation of an infinite person down into the constructs of language. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And that's why the Bible's not like any other book. It has this quality, this dimension in it that people can come again and again. Two identical twins can read the same book through and be spoken to differently by the same scriptures. It doesn't mean the Bible means anything you want it to mean. It just means it's multidimensional. And the more you read it, the more exciting it'll become. Matter of fact, the way of reading the Bible, the way of understanding the Bible would be this. God gives pictures of things. If you use the word water, and say, what does water mean in the Bible? You find out what a thing means by looking at the way it is used. Water is, right in the start, God dividing the waters, separation of waters. So water can involve separation of things. Baptism separates you from another whole lifestyle. Water involves purification. Water can sometimes mean judgment. An entire world was wiped out by a flood. So when you start reading the Bible, you only know a few things. You read a few stories in the Bible, you'll get a picture of water, water, water. But as the more you read, when Jesus says, I am the water of life, then all of these images all click together and just magnify. And the book of Revelation has all of these words used. So when it sums up and those phrases are used, if you spend a whole bunch of time in the Bible, then the images will just explode to you. That's why it's important just to read it, think about it. And the Bible then is not like some secret code. I'm not talking about the code. It's not like it has this in meaning to a few people. Youngest Christian can get it straight away. But the most mature Christian will still have his mind blown. And it's like that. It has a quality of God in it. By the way, I told these parents, I don't mind having bad dolls and good dolls, because the good guys have got to fight somebody. Otherwise you'll have Moses taking on Jesus and stuff, you know. And then there's nothing wrong with stories. God uses stories all the time. Do you know it is possible to give something that is true but not real? Or real but not true? A lie is real but it's not true. See that? A parable is true but it's not real. It's a story or an illustration that doesn't actually happen in real life, but it conveys truth. So don't be afraid of fantasy. The fantasy you should be afraid of is that becomes your world, that takes God's place. The trouble with an idol is it becomes a focus point for a particular series of fantasies or lusts that you identify and use as something that you can see and get a hold of and control. We'll say an image is a controllable idolatry. It is something that you can run, that you can control, that helps focus the particular worship that you have chosen to live in. And God is not controllable. You are not going to that's making God in your image, puts the reins in your hand. You remember when they came to Jesus with they said, is it lawful to pay tribute to Caesar or not? And you got all these people that just being taxed out of existence, and Roman soldiers standing around ready to put a spear into anybody who said it wasn't. And they wait till all this crowd is there, both the really poor, oppressed people and Roman soldiers, and they go, we have a question for you. Is it lawful to pay tribute to Caesar or not? So either way he's dead, you know. If he says, no, of course not, the Romans kill him there, forget the cross. And then if he says, yes, it is, well, these people go, well, how can this person be from God and support all this injustice? Remember what Jesus said? If you got a coin, show me a penny. He didn't have one of his own. Hard to sue him. Show me a coin. And then he said, whose is this image and superscription? And they said, Caesar. He said, then give to Caesar the things that are Caesar's and give to God the things that are his. And we're made in his image. So guess who we belong to? By right. I'm not talking about need. By right. Give to God the things that are his. So it's not wrong then, art. I don't think there's a problem with art. Art that takes your heart is a problem. Psalm 115, verses 2 through to 8. Why should the heathen say, where now is their God? Our God is in the heavens. He has done whatever he's pleased. Their idols are silver and gold. This is Psalm 115, verses 2 to 8. The work of men's hands. They have mouths, but they cannot speak. They have ears, but they can't hear. They've got eyes, they can't see, and stuff like this. They that make them alike to them. And so is everyone that trusts in them. God is saying, hello? You have no brain. And then Psalm 102, 25 to 27. Of old you have laid the foundation of the earth. The heavens are the work of your hands. They shall perish, but you shall endure. You see, you've got to understand this. Most of the universe is actually gas. Bunch of what is out there is hydrogen or helium, okay? Huge chunk of the universe, well over 90%, is hydrogen or helium. There's a tiny little amount left that's other, we call them heavy elements that make civilization possible, like building cars and stuff like that. Tiny fraction of that. Water is exceedingly rare in the universe. This is probably the wateriest planet in the universe, right here, composed of drips. But most of that out there is just gas, flaming gas, okay? God spoke all that into existence in a single beep, and there it is. He could just recycle that thing into word. I was asked to speak in a college one time in an astronomy class, and I asked the Lord, you want me to speak in this class? Because I had a pair of binoculars once. And he said I could do it. So it's a secular class, you know. But they asked me to speak, so my subject was, is there life on other planets, including this one? and we were looking at the possibilities of life, you know, and in the structure of what actually is out there. And I walked in and there were star charts all around the room. You know, it's an astronomy class, so they got all these different things. And I just started laughing. I couldn't help it. And the teacher said, what is so funny? I said, how many of you have been studying this for at least 3 years? And they put their hands up. I said, I really feel sorry for you, because not too long from now, God is going to recycle everything. You're going to have to learn it all over again if you survive. So that's nothing. You understand? There's nothing out there. That is just big fireworks display. The real deal is this obscure little planet in an obscure little corner of the galaxy under a yellow sun, you know, stuck way off on the edge there. And most amazing thing is this. Is there life on other worlds? Is there life on other worlds? Yeah, there could be. But I'll tell you this. Mankind, as we were designed to be, is the greatest creation of God in the universe. You know I know that? Because he only had one son, and he became man. That means no angels, no demons, nothing in the universe has the priority of creation that man does. I'm talking about as he was designed to be. Do you know why demons like to attack man? Not just jealousy of God. George MacDonald said, speaking of the temptation of Jesus, in order for Satan to steal the world, he first of all has to steal the man. Right. See that? Do you know God placed you in a position of unique authority over the universe? And if you screw up, if a man gives his life to the demonic world, it is like a man giving his life to his dog, and the dog running the man. And Satan couldn't get Christ, but he will go for the next best thing, the image of God. Because if he can get you, he can access the authority that God gave you. To give yourself over to the demonic world under the idea of this, if you follow me, I'll give you power, is actually the precise reverse. If you give your life to the demonic world, you give him power. And we are indeed fallen. You know, we have dropped from where God had us. All right, that's the thing. Let me give you a couple of quick ones from the New Testament. John 4, 23 to 24 says, the hour comes and now is, John 4, 23 to 24, when true worshippers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father seeks such to worship him. God is spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. And then Acts 17, 24, we looked at this verse before in the previous session. God that made the world and all things therein, seeing he is Lord of heaven and earth, does not dwell in temples made with hands. You can't put him in a little box. that they should seek the Lord, though he be not far from every one of us, for in him we live and move and have our very existence. Now I want to show you something on the board that may be of help to you. The Bible reveals then that what reality is like is this. We have what we call the material world. I don't want to say that in case it sounds like some song, but we'll call it the space-time phenomena universe that you and I are part of. You're sitting in a chair, it's hard, it gets harder as time goes on. We're in physical bodies and we're part of a space-time phenomenal world. Now we could call this the created material world. And we know from the scriptures that this is not the most solid. See, that's the weird thing. This is not the most solid. We think it is. But in physics we know this isn't solid. What you're sitting on is not solid. The thing you're sitting on, what you're sitting on with, is not solid. What you're witnessing there is a collision of energy. You're not witnessing a collision of two hard things, but binding energies that hold things together. As a matter of fact, if you could throw out of phase the energies that bind you together with the energies that bind that chair together, you'd go straight through the chair as if it wasn't there. As a matter of fact, if I could throw out of phase the energies that bind me together with this board, I could just walk right through that board as if it wasn't there. It would be real, and I am real, but they could freely cross, just like you can fire bullets through a propeller of a plane if you don't put them in sync. That's how Snoopy can survive to fight the Red Baron. Okay? You shoot even one of the, when they shoot through, it's because the propeller goes like this and the bullet goes, and if you're firing when the propeller is out of sync, hang on, Snoopy. So the created material is not actually solid. Now we know this. In physics, it sure feels solid to us. But we're bumping, if you took the actual space out of what we are, to get to supermatter, we're just very, very, very tiny, okay? But this is not the whole of the created world. The Bible reveals is also a created spiritual. It speaks about things visible and invisible. There are beings that are not material beings, but they are real. Now, I'm allowed at least one heresy a session, so I'll throw this one in. I think there's a difference between angels and fallen angels and demons. And here's the thought. I know there's a difference. The Bible never uses them interchangeably. I think that before the fall of the angels, the dark angels, that angels could freely switch between matter and energy modes. In the Bible, they can just rise, walk into flames and appear and disappear. They can do all these things. I think the angels that sinned, some of them were in a matter mode, and some of them were in an energy mode. And when they were cast out of heaven, they lost the ready ability to shift modes. And those that are in a matter mode are chained, awaiting judgment. But those in an energy mode have no bodies. And they can't readily get them. So they look for physical forms through which they could manifest their personalities. And that is what demon possession is about. Demons are fallen beings without easy access to physical modes. Now, created spiritual, but that itself is not final reality. The final reality is uncreated spirit. Now, here's what I want you to see. This is the heaviest. This is the most solid and the most real. We think the exact opposite. We think this is the real, this is the ghostly. Remember Casper, the friendly ghost? Okay, if he took a sheet off to wash, he was only eyes and a smile. We think that the spiritual world is less real than this world, and then whatever that is, that's really far out there. Now I want to introduce you to Flat Man. I'm going to give you a Twilight Zone episode now. Here is a little man. I'm going to create this man. That's what I love about boards. Now, this is my flat man. I just created him. Didn't exist before. This man is a two-dimensional man. Now, you purists are going to have to ignore the thickness of the chalk, all right? And you go, what about the dimension of the chalk? What about... Just shut up, all right? This is only an illustration. Now, my flat man exists in two dimensions. He has height, he has width, but he has no thickness. See? Have I looked? Gone. He has no idea at all of this world out here because he's only got two dimensions. He is actually locked into that particular flat land that he lives in, at Blackwood. Now, I'm going to do a miracle for Mr. Flatman. I'm going to create a bird. Weep, weep. Flatman is freaked. I don't even know if I could see the bird, of course. I'd have to take this, and then you probably only see that bit, so I'd have to do this. And then he's not sure what that looks like, so I don't know how to get through to him, but I've made something, you know. He is freaked. He's blown his mind, okay? He is thinking, where did that bird come from? It just appeared, and there it is. Now watch. Where did it go? Yeah. He is totally, absolutely freaked now. There was something that wasn't there. Now it's gone. He has no idea at all what happened. He cannot understand. He has no outness. He is not thick. Bless his heart. Now, I could do another little man right here. Tiny little man. See that? Now I can put a wall between them. And he can't see them anymore. But I can see them both at the same time. I can give him a headache. I could take his brain away without even making a hole in his head. I can touch both of them at the same time without going through the wall. I can do all kinds of cool things with Flatman, and he has no idea at all what is happening to him because I have one more dimension than he does. I have access to another whole realm that he can't even comprehend. My little 2D Flatman, no-brain dude. Well, you are not just three dimensions. You have dimensionalities that you are part of and connected to that take you further than this. And reality is not just time and space and phenomena. You have connections in your life to another whole world that cannot easily be explained or talked about or even described in a 3D world. In Contact, which is hardly a Christian movie, they get this message downloaded. See that? And they have no idea how to translate it. Seems to be something. Until one guy figures out if these beings have more dimensions than us, maybe it's in a matrix. Maybe if we did it as a square instead of just a flat thing, and they put it together, whoa, instructions for building something that will freak everybody out. And the point is this, we are dealing, this is only created spiritual. The demonic world and the angelic world have both ability to touch and shift and do things like that. I believe it is in these areas, the interface between these two, that we have the UFO phenomena, which sometimes behave physically and sometimes behave paraphysically. And we are dealing with a world that just freaks people out who only think this world is real, but they haven't seen anything yet. This is the world behind that world. And here's the wonderful thing. You get direct access. Do you know what angels think when they see people who are Christians? How can they live like that? They're not just this. They have been made in God's image, and this is the way it looks. Here it is. It's not like this. It's not God. Archangels. Archie the angel. Archangels. Like there's Michael. Gabriel. You know. Then like smaller angels. To be touched by. Cherubim. Small fat babies with pampers that little bow and arrow to shoot you with on St. Valentine. If you see a real angel, you'll need pampers. Little babies with, you know, the angels, and then these are like sort of buck private angels that park their car around back, and then and then down here is mankind. See, and then we have dog and animals, and down to viruses and amoebas. And see that? This is what freaks the angels out. That's really where you're supposed to be. See? Family, head, body. These are butlers. Butlers, that's what they are. Brilliant, beautiful butlers. You met, and the fallen ones, see, knowing this, the fallen ones want that. They want access. What does it mean to offer the gift of sight in a world where everybody can see? It only means something if nobody can see. And the demonic world always makes promises concerning this realm to people in order to get access to the real purpose for which God made man. Remember this. There is a God-man. Not God disguised as man or God pretending to be man, but God who became man. Whoever lives to make intercession. Are you saying man is God? No. You should have learned that. We did that in 1A. No. But to be put into his family. Not just a butler. Not just a servant, but sons and daughters. That is the greatest privilege in the universe. And these butlers stand by thinking, I'm only a butler. What are these guys doing? You know? Which is the most solid of these things? Huh? C.S. Lewis said this. Jesus rose from the dead. Remember they were all locked in? Scared, the Romans are going to come kill them. Jesus rose from the dead. They're all locked inside. And here's what he doesn't say in the book of Revelation. Behold, I freak your head and kick your door in. He didn't blow a Jesus-shaped hole in the door. They're all there terrified, and Jesus just comes. He comes right through the wall, right through the door, right through anything. And they all freak. They go, ah! Because normal people don't walk through walls or doors. The reason they freaked is because they thought he was a ghost. And you know this. Ghosts walk through walls because they're less solid than walls. And Lewis said this. Jesus walked through the wall, not because he was less solid than the wall, but because the wall was less solid than he was. He walked through the wall like you walk through mist in the morning. He is, after all, called the rock, not the gas. And you got to get this. He is the most final reality, the absolute. Spiritual is not less, it is more. It is deeper, not shallower. It is more solid, not less solid. And you have not only a physical body, you have a created soul, and you have a spirit. And you simultaneously can be a citizen of three worlds. And the great tragedy is most just live like this, as if this is the whole world and that's all there is. I was witnessing one time, I got into it, actually, I have, my wife's mother is a witnessing machine. She witnesses to anything that moves. If it does not move, she pushes it first, then she witnesses to it. And we were down on the beach in New Zealand, and there was this guy out there in the sun, you know, and his little kid was playing in the waves. He was just keeping an eye on him. And my mother-in-law started witnessing to him. And he goes, oh, I'm not, he said a few choice words, I'm not interested in religious stuff. I don't believe in a God. I don't believe in heaven or hell or life after death or anything. So she gets me. You know, I'm there trying to catch one or two rays. And she said, when you talk to this man, he says he's an atheist, doesn't believe in God. So she gets me. So I'm talking to this guy, and he goes, I said, you don't believe there's any reality outside just your body? He said, yeah. I said, what happens when you die? He said, we fall on the ground with dirt. That's it. Nothing. And I said, well, what about the ongoingness of your life? You believe there's anything more to existence than just dropping off into the dirt? And that's it? He pointed to his son. He said, see that? That's eternal life. My life goes on in him. And he was this famous interior decorator. He had all the money he could want and stuff like that. And I looked into his eyes. They looked a bit like this. And I said, are you willing to risk not only your soul, but the soul and the life of your child, that you are right and Jesus is wrong when he says, what shall it profit a man if he gains the whole world and lose his own soul? And with all the preparation you make and all your job and everything else, if Jesus is right and you have made no preparation at all for your eternal future, then you have lost everything. You see, the spiritual is more real, more solid. Not that this isn't. But now, a couple of quick things. God's Spirit can be manifested in some form that you can hear or see or touch. Audible or visible or sensible form. That uncreated Spirit, he can reveal himself, not necessarily always as a person, but in some way that you know he's around. And I'll give you quickies. John 1:32. John bore record saying, I saw the Spirit descending from heaven like a dove, and it abode on him. He saw something that looked like a beautiful dove coming down on Christ. And it was the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit isn't a bird. You know? He comes in a form. We've got transposition here, which is the name you give, by the way, to something where the lesser has to represent more than one thing. Sometimes a thing is just a bird flying. Sometimes it's not. I remember as a young Christian, I've been only saved about a couple of years. I was dealing with different Marxist people in New Zealand. We had quite a high Marxist population. It was a socialist nation and stuff. And a lot of them were like working class 50, 60-year-old guys that worked in the factories and stuff. And I remember I had a dream, a very vivid dream. In the dream, I was dreaming that I was asleep. You ever had that kind of dreaming dream? And I was in my room, and I woke up in the dream. And my mother came into the room, and she said, there's a man outside at the door, and he wants to talk to you. And I went out towards the door, and as I did, I had this kind of sense of like an impending battle. And I opened the door, and there was a guy there, and I never forgot, he was quite a stocky, short guy, and he had braces on. Remember, braces holding his trousers up. And he looked at me, and he put his fingers, his thumbs under his arms like this in sort of a, oratory pose. And then he began to speak about the glories of Marxism. And I'm just standing there like this. And as I was standing listening to him, I suddenly saw a bird, a most unusual bird. It was brilliant blue, had a brilliant yellow beak. It was the most, I've never seen a bird like it. It wasn't a blue bird. It was like iridescent kingfisher blue, only shining. And it was right above him. See, and it was flying around him like this. And I looked at the bird. I saw it. It was just circling over his head. See that? And then as I looked at it, it just went like this. And I felt suddenly a sense of supernatural. God's doing something. You know, a bird is something in the air? Heavens. Sometimes God speaks about the haunt of every unclean bird. There's something in the heavenly, something there, up there in the air. And I thought, hey, this is poor guy, and he's giving me an oratory, and there's this whole supernatural world out there. And I looked from the bird, kind of smiling like, you are really going to get it now, down to this guy, and instead of him talking, he had his head down too, like this. And he looked up, and his eyes were red, glowing red. And I woke up like that. I said, just before I woke up, Satan, I was going to try to say, Satan, in the name of Jesus, I rebuke you. I said, Satan, I couldn't speak. I woke up. What does that tell you? It told me this. Always start with Jesus, with the devil afterwards. But I learned something. The world that you and I live in is not just a physical world. There's a spiritual reality there, and sometimes the gate is moved, the props are shifted, and you see it's not what you think it is. And a lot of movies and stuff, Rosemary's Baby was a classic example of this, where total materialist people whose whole world is just this, coming up with great explanations for all of these weird things that are happening until the last 10 pages of the book, the last 15 minutes of the movie, where all of the rationalism is blown aside and the reality suddenly jumps out. There is a supernatural world. That's the X-Files. You know, you've got your skeptic, though they change places sometimes, and the believer. That's our world. There is a real world. God is spiritual, but that spirit can be manifested in different forms. A couple more. Exodus 3, 1, 2, and 4. The angel of the Lord appeared to Moses as a flame of fire out of the middle of the bush. It wasn't just, I saw this stupid movie where it said, these are the explanation of the miracles of the Bible. It was a movie. And it said that in the Middle East there are certain bushes that exude resins. And it's conceivable that on a very hot day, these resinous bushes could catch fire. And that's probably what Moses saw. An overheated resin bush. I could scarcely wait to see how they were going to further explain how this particular resinous bush had been crossed with an asbestos plant in its earlier thing. And the reason why it wasn't burning up was because of the asbestos component in this bush. And further, how they're going to explain that warm El Nino Sirocco wind or something that had set this bush on fire in the first place, that the bush had somehow grown nodules of resin among its finer branches that resembled vocal cords. So when this warm wind blew through it, it said, Moses, Moses. You believe that? I got a bridge I can sell you. The angel of the Lord appeared to Moses in a flame of fire. Sometimes God can be seen as a fire, as a bird. Here's another one, 2 Samuel 5, 24 to 25. David is waiting to fight this terrible battle. He could lose. If God isn't in it, he's going to die. And here's what God says. He says, you wait, you listen. And let it be when you hear the sound of marching in the tops of the mulberry trees, bestir yourself, for then the Lord shall go out before you to smite the host of the Philistines. So he's sitting there in the midst of a bunch of trees waiting for a marching sound. And isn't that a trippy thing? And what is that marching sound? The sound of God going out before him to do the war. And then it was just all over but the shouting. Acts 2:24, the birthday party of the church. Suddenly there came a sound from heaven as of a mighty rushing wind. Let's put it like this. A tornado showed up. They're waiting for something, you know. God said, you wait, wait. So they're waiting. They waited, day, more days, wait. And when the day of Pentecost was fully come, this thing, I don't know if the doors rattled, it sounded like a rushing, like God was in a hurry to get this thing on the road. And it was the birthday of the church, so they all got candles. Each person became a candle. Fire sitting on their heads. We've seen this. I was in a meeting one time in a group of evangelicals that believed that God did do miracles once and were not interested at all in thinking about anybody speaking in supernatural languages. And God showed up in this meeting, and there was fire and wind, but no tongues. I thought it was kind of God. It's like, well, let's try the other two. See if you... And everybody went on their face on the floor. It's really interesting. See, God's kind. He didn't show you everything. John 12:27-29. Father, glorify your name. This is Jesus. Then there came a voice from heaven saying, I have both glorified it and I will glorify it again. Now, is that just something Jesus heard? Was it like a mental thing? The people, therefore, that stood by and heard it said it thundered. Others said an angel spoke to him. So there was a physical thing. So if you put it like this, if you went to the cross where Jesus died, as he hung on the cross, you could run your finger on the cross and get a splinter off it. If you had a video camera outside the tomb when Jesus busted open the tomb and came out, you could record him coming out. It isn't a mental impression. It is a real thing. 2 or 3 years ago, I have a friend who has an incredible videotape. And he said, I want to show you something. And this tape was shot of a church team of young people that had gone out to an Eastern European nation just to minister in this church. And one of the people that was shooting the crowd, you know, doing these sort of, you can't do these fast things because everybody gets sick, you know, like. So he's just doing this slow pan through the crowd, you know, and that. And then back up to stage again where the kids were worshiping and praying for people. And there was a strong sense of the presence of the Lord in this thing. So he said, I want you to watch this. He didn't tell me. He said, I want you to see this. This is a team that went out. So I'm watching this thing. And as they pan through the audience, those of you who've been in Eastern European countries, especially some years back, you can wear any color you like as long as it's gray. You know, and everybody is in the same kind of clothes. They're all dressed basically in sort of really drab-looking clothes, and the camera's panning through the audience. And right in the middle of the audience is this young man standing there. He's white. He's got hair like this. And he's just looking around, enjoying everything. And as the camera went past him, I went, oh, that's Jesus. And then he started to cry, see? It just was there on video. It was the wildest thing. And they're not marketing this tape. They're not letting everybody know about the thing. But they didn't see him. Nobody saw him there. They can't remember seeing any guy in any kind of color other than gray out in the audience there. But the camera picked him up. So you won't see that on sale someplace, some tape of the month club. And he would never tell anybody anything. Just let him watch the tape. and see what they said. That's wild. Here's Saul. How do you get a guy saved who has a ministry of killing Christians for Christ, and his whole job is to kill everybody he can find that looks Christian? You talk about radically, this guy's not just mildly disinterested. Acts 9, 3-5. And as Saul journeyed, suddenly, you ever seen this suddenly? All the horror movies have it. Little kid bouncing a ball. Boom, boom, boom. And you go, boy, there's something weird about this little kid. Boom, boom, boom. And the music goes, boom, 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 boom. You're going, oh, shoot. There's something wrong with that ball, or something wrong with the ground, or the kid, or something. Boom, boom, boom. And then kid comes to the corner, boom, boom, boom. And then suddenly there's this silence. You go, ah! And it's a cat or something. There. And you think, oh, it's only a cat. And then you turn and there's the real thing. See that? The suddenly. That's like completely unanticipated. Not, let's get in a spiritual mood. Let us really seek to see if anything could, just like, hey, I'm having a good time killing Christians. Wham! Out of nowhere. Here's the way the devil does it. He waits till it's like 3 in the morning. Your radio goes out, you know. Your car runs. Suddenly it stops. The radio maybe changes stations on its own. Then a Hilton chandelier comes down, shines a light on you, blackout for 3 days, wake up, having lost all consciousness of time, have a little mark on the back of your neck. You can go in an X-Files episode. That's how the demonic world likes doing it, see? Here's how God does it. Waits till it's broad daylight. Busy thoroughfare where everybody's riding donkeys, see? Not some quiet little back road desert mountain thing. A guy who's absolutely got no concern, not thinking about any of this stuff, just, I'll kill these. And then, and a light brighter than the sun. You know how bright that is? Falls off his horse. Saul isn't seeking some other reality. He's got his reality. He's got it down. He knows that Christians, they're heretics, will kill a lot of them. God has ways of getting your attention. He doesn't have to show off. You know, big people, when they shake hands with you, shake hands very carefully. Small, short people, when they shake hands with you, often try to break your hand to demonstrate that they're actually a lot stronger than you think. Here. You know? You get a guy like John Jacobs with the power to... When he shakes hand, he has to be very careful because he might sneeze and rip your arm off, you know? You know? Chihuahua, Great Dane. See? Which of these two dogs do you think makes the greatest noise if they meet on a dark night? See that? The devil is like the Wizard of Oz. He's got all of this PA system and cool special effects, and it takes the little dog, which is God spelt backwards, to go behind the curtain and see there's this old dude with a PA system. So remember this, God can show up in different forms. The spiritual can manifest himself in different forms. Sometimes sound, sometimes light, sometimes a voice, sometimes. This manifestation can be human in form. A couple of quick scriptures. Exodus 24, 9-10. This is before the incarnation, before Jesus walked the earth. Then went up Moses and Aaron and 70 of the elders of Israel, and they saw the God of Israel. They saw him. And there was under his feet, as it were, a paved work of sapphire stone, and as it was the body of heaven in its clearness. There's this light, and then there's preciousness, and there's permanence, all of things, dual things, see? But they saw, not just flame, they saw a person. And Jesus hadn't come yet. Can be human in form. Here's a classic one, Genesis 18, verses 17 to 23. And the Lord appeared to Abraham in the plains of Mamre as he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day. Now, I don't think it was like this. I don't think he was sitting there and like way in the distance, this figure came. And like half an hour later, hi. I think he was there and it was hot and he was just sitting out there in the tent door and then poof, and there was a figure there. See? And you can read this thing because he says, there's this whole dialogue that goes on between this person, it's a figure, it's a person, it's a man, and Abraham. Matter of fact, in the last 3 minutes we have before we quit, in this section, have a look at it. Genesis 18, 2 to 16. See, God can show up in physical form. It's rare, but he does it. He lifted up his eyes and he looked, and 3 men stood by him, and when he saw them, he ran, and he bowed himself to the ground, and he said, "My Lord, have I found favor?" And he goes on this thing, "I want to get you something to drink." And then Abraham got to Sarah, make some cakes and stuff. And then verse 9, they said to him, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" And he said, "Behold, in the tent." And he said, it's one of these 3 men, he said, "Behold, I will certainly return to you according to the time of life, and lo, Sarah your wife shall have a son." Sarah heard it in the tent door. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and past it. And Sarah laughed within herself. See? "After I'm waxed old shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also." And the Lord said to Abraham, see, from he to the Lord, why did Sarah laugh? Is anything too hard for the Lord? And Sarah denied. She said, "I didn't laugh," because she was afraid. She said, "Yes, you did laugh." And you read the rest of this chapter, there's an entire conversation between the Lord and Abraham. Now, either there's 3 men all standing there, and then the Lord is sort of just speaking out of heaven like this, or one of these 3 men is the Lord. And then the scripture goes on and it says 2 angels came to Sodom. Where's the 3rd guy? He's back there. And this is one of the greatest instances of intercession in the whole of the scriptures. Who stops first? Abraham stops first. Remember that? God says, "Abraham, I'm going to destroy this nation." What if you find, okay, if I can find, what if you find, goes all the way down, see? God doesn't go, "Hey, you say one more thing, that's it. You go too." So what if you find 4? I wish we knew exactly how many people there were in Sodom. Then we could work out a sort of like an intercession percentage. That's why God didn't tell you. So you just pray anyway. Okay, take a break.